Wondering why I don't get so many frames here actually. Is the audio okay somehow? Not sure if. Why are there always technical difficulties? Somehow the frame rate today is not amazing. And this is why I tested previously. Anyway, let's see how this goes. Audio video is 5 by 5. What do I mean 5 by 5? 5 starts from 5 or 5 frames? I hope more than 5 frames. But somehow my Linux kernel does not like video decoding and encoding at the same moment. Anyway, the point is not to playback video here constantly, so I hope actually we get indeed a faster encoding preset warning. Anyway, let's allow some more people to tune in and then we start in a moment. Until then you can already leave a comment how the video and audio, well, video for sure is. Actually, maybe I should also not playback my own video here. So much for using AMD hardware encode. Maybe I should disable hardware decode in Firefox. Let's hope that improves as soon as we stop this silly video there. In the meantime, welcome everyone, those who are here early. As in fine, well, except for the video playback here. I hope OBS right now indeed says 10 frames. I actually tested stuff on my second channel earlier this lunch to check this AMD encode stuff, but I actually did not playback a video at the same time, so that might be that. Let's pause this for a second just to see if this improves things. 16 frames, 17 frames. I also did not have a second video display attached earlier. Anyway, each stream we improve stuff here, so anyway, this should be, because earlier we were streaming with 30 frames. Well, I could stop this for a second and try with slightly, but no, we get 10 Mbit. Slightly wonder why. How much does this improve stuff? Anyway, we are still waiting for people to tune in, so we will be mostly talking anyway, as this is a news show of the week. Still testing if this concept is worth it. Let's quickly check on my phone how things are streaming there. And then we start in a minute or two. Yep, at least then we have video also tested. I see it already coming. We start the show and then everyone will be sad that they missed our live program, but that's what it is. Oh, by the way, I forgot to set my background. Let's see, what do we get? 15 frames. I really wonder, because when I tested this I had 30 frames. Let's maybe close that. And what did we get then? 16 frames. Whatever the reason for that. So welcome everyone to this week's Bits Tonight show live test. Welcome everyone, thank you for watching, thanks for tuning in. Also, I probably could prepare a little bit better, always a little bit short in time. As you guess also, I'm just back here, just hacked on this Xilinx FPGA based 8-channel digital ADAT card that I last year brought 2 for the Octane ADAT stuff. I also have an 8-channel microphone input thing here from Behringer, some studio something, so I eventually wanted to use this for microphone input, but as it is so often, you buy stuff from eBay and then it has regressions in Linux. And actually the funny thing is these cards are even 20 years old. Time goes by, hard to believe. And the good thing is this is how we can get them cheap on eBay now for just a couple of euros for some higher quality audio stuff. Just that right now I got it to work today a little bit. So this is still our concept of improving open source and fixing regressions and stuff, financed here from YouTube AdSense revenue. This is why you should share, like and subscribe. And with this it's time to start our weekly Bits show fragment of developments in the IT world. This time, of course, as the intro was already rolling. This is slightly uncomfortable that it opens this in this browser tab. Anyway, as you have already seen here, today marks a milestone in SpaceX's Crew demo mission 1. As far as I've seen so far, until this afternoon, successfully launched from the launch site there to space with, as far as I've seen so far, 0 problems. That is of course awesome to see. Developments in space and this improved or all new Crew capsule and improved rockets and such rocket engines. Really nice to see. And this will be for sure very interesting, at least for me in our lifetime, to see that we hopefully go back to Moon, and maybe in our lifetime we still see people walking on Mars, which both things would be amazing. But this is already what I wanted to say about this. The next breaking news is ARM announced Ares, some new server, high-performance server core, and Linus Torvalds had some words to say for this. And by the way, this show is meant to be live, so all your comments are highly appreciated. That would make the whole thing here much more dynamic, to get some feedback and ideas and stuff. And so this new ARM Ares core, or whatever you want to pronounce it, and Linus Torvalds chimed in here with, quote, "I can pretty much guarantee that as long as everybody does cross-development, the platform won't be all that stable or successful. Some people think that the cloud means that the instruction set doesn't matter. Develop at home, deploy in the cloud. That's bullshit. If you develop on x86, then you're going to want to deploy on x86 because you'll be able to run what you test at home. And by at home, I don't mean literally at your home, but in your work environment. And then, guys, you you really not understand why x86 took over the server market, question mark. It wasn't just the price, it was literally this develop at home issue. Thousands of small companies ended up having random small internal workload where it was easy to just get a random white box PC and run some silly small thing on it yourself. And I wanted to give my 2 cents to this, and I have unfortunately to disagree with Linus here. I myself got plenty of things, and even I was not a rich student and I scrapped all my money together that I worked on side projects and such. Everything I earned I invested in alternative architectures before, because I grew up with x86 and I found x86 pretty annoying with all the historic heritage there, all the chaos in the instruction set, all the complexity, all the compatibility, starting from real mode to all the various addressing themes and everything. And also actually x86 back in that day, in my opinion, had the impression, or the general impression in the general public, that it's not the most stable architecture. So I got Spark, then I got PowerPC, and I might be a little bit of an exceptional developer, but I think this is something that a lot of developers dreamt about, to have some other architectures. And from the feedback I get on my channel with all the vintage Unix hardware, also the HPUX I got new, I never had HPUX, and just for the fun of it, people collect this, people work with this. Of course, HPUX with PA risk is obviously dead, but there is still MIPS, and of course SGI is kind of non-existent except the legacy in rack mount or rackable, or who purchased them. But MIPS is still alive with embedded routers. Most of the access points run this, and certainly ARM with all the also access points, but also smartphones. Of course, there are very few smartphones that are x86 based for so many reasons. And I don't agree to say here nobody has here ARM when everyone has a smartphone with ARM. And I also do not agree with his reasoning that the success of x86 is because everyone had this. My opinion, my impression is that x86, so the success is based on the price, that nobody wanted to spend all that premium money. Of course, some have. For example, some systems I have here were from banks. The Spark, Ultra Spark I got 15 years ago was, I think they came from the Deutsche Bank. The HPUX, one had a sticker that I got this year, one had a sticker from the German Telekom and stuff like this. And also another Spark that I got later, the Ultra 30 or what this was, had sticker from some Bosch-like brake manufacturer in Germany and stuff like this. So where they had mission critical systems, then they usually had expensive workstations and servers and all the IBM stuff, obviously, with PowerPC still being alive. And in my opinion, my impression is that x86 won for the most part because it was dirt cheap, and all the companies usually do not want to spend that much money. And I also do not agree that this instruction set matters too much. Most of the time you don't program on the assembly machine code level, but write generic C, C++, Python, Ruby, Java, JavaScript, you name it. And there it only matters that the C library works, and with all the access points and routers and smartphones and stuff, the C library obviously works well enough to be stable enough. And this is just why I wanted to quote this weekly development and also point out that maybe Linus Torvalds is not always right with everything, and some of his reasoning is sometimes not the most easy for me to follow. And then other development, next news development is how to break PDF signatures. There was a huge news circulating security-related news that PDF signatures might not be the most secure. So some security researchers found here that various programs do not properly verify the signatures of digitally signed PDF files. And I've not yet read all the details, but for the most part it sounded like that the biggest problem is that many of the applications from Adobe Acrobat, but also Foxit PDF and many others, do they list here more, even cloud stuff, like there is cloud signature verification services, that they do not check all the signature details. So for example, I think they found that if they just invalidate the signature, or the PDF file can also be extended, updated with like additional data written to the end. If you have a PDF file, this is even how signatures work. The signatures usually add onto the PDF file with some reference table and objects in there. And I think they also found that they could easily manipulate the file and the signature just signing parts of the PDF file and not the PDF file in its entirety. So they found it is easy to spoof those, and I think nearly all programs they tested were prone to this attack. And this is not such a great surprise for me, as we work a little bit in PDF and have a PDF library. We actually, however, do not do PDF signatures, probably something we should get in ourselves, as all the programs apparently do not do the best job on this. Of course, PDFs often had security issues, and this is not the first time, and certainly doesn't come to a surprise. From my own experience, and I will make a video about this, also long time video I want to make with my involvements in PDF in latest months, and I wanted to say some things to this. And one thing I can say, however, is that the PDF standard is 1000 pages long, so this is also no problem. I could, by the way, check if I have it here in our test suite. I might have probably one of those things I should have prepared. Good that I didn't ls this. Too many tests in this test suite. Let's see if we have the PDF reference there. I have it here. This is a older PDF standard document, and as you can maybe see, that this has 1300 pages. Here 1310 pages, but this of course includes the index and such. So the PDF standard, even this old PDF standard, this is pretty old already. Maybe this is already 10 years old right now. In other news, the ISO standard committee with all the companies, including ours in the meantime, is working on PDF 2.0. That might be a new ISO standard this year. And this ISO standard for PDF 2 will probably also be 1000 pages long. It is not longer because a lot of old stuff is deprecated and stuff like this. And as you can see, if you have already ever looked into a PDF, and if you take a look on the standard, this is pretty long, and you can do a lot of things, including multimedia data, audio data, video, you name it, and including encryption. This is, by the way, how this looks. So this is a PDF file, header, body, cross-reference table, and trailer, and you can extend this file. So you can have the same setup again and again by programs writing again additional stuff to this file, including signatures. So if you sign a PDF file, you will have a new body of additional objects and cross-reference table and a new trailer. And yeah, with a 1300 page long standard, it probably is no surprise to anyone that there are sometimes complex issues, and also you can do a lot of things in many different ways. So there is not one way to do something, but usually there are like 10 ways to do something. And this is also how sometimes bugs like this happens. But it is of course sad and telling for our industry that probably not one single program they tested was correctly validating all the signatures, and were often spoiled or irritated by the corrupted signature to accept this anyway and show this as valid. But yeah, just in case you and your office workflow somewhere is dealing with PDF signatures, probably something you want to be aware of. Let's just check what we are streaming here. So then, in other news that I found newsworthy, why is this opening? Isn't this then? Slightly uncomfortable with this setup. We will see how this goes. Need to work on my presentation setup. Also maybe install an ad blocker another day. German news, sorry for that, but I will translate or say anyway. Did not usually bother to look up English translations. So iOS 12 Siri shortcut allows jailbreak, which I find pretty funny, to tell you, hey Siri, jailbreak my iPhone. Thank you very much. I myself have a little bit love and hate relationship. Oftentimes Siri understands me. I usually use Siri in English. But when I tell Siri to call my wife, 1 in 10 times Siri calls someone else. That is slightly inconvenient, but also slightly funny, but also slightly sad. But anyway, I found it really funny that the people who do jailbreaks, which obviously today is a rather complex business, having to dig up so many security vulnerabilities. Usually you have to chain 5 or 10 security issues together, because often breaking out from one sandbox is not enough, and then you need to break out of one thing and another and become root and stuff like this. So nowadays, if you ever looked on this kind of security issues, it's a huge chain of stuff to break, and I find it pretty funny that they made a user-friendly way to use Siri shortcuts to initiate the jailbreak. This is, however, by the way, if you're into jailbreak, you don't want to upgrade your iOS. And because this is right now this uncover jailbreak is maximal possible with iOS 12.1.2. I think, yeah, right now they are at 12.1.4, I guess, according to this news. So if you are into jailbreaking and stuff, you not only have a easy Siri shortcut possibility right now, but you also, as usual, should often not upgrade to the latest and greatest iOS version, obviously for all those security vulnerability reasons. Then other interesting news I found is that someone found an SDK for Xbox 360 already some time ago, and they found a matching PowerPC G5. So apparently I did not know this, but I was not in Xbox 360 development. So those Xbox 360 were also PowerPC based, similar to the Sony PS3. And the development kit, apparently according to this blog post, again just quoting the news here, don't have any inside knowledge to that. And the author here presented here the Mac he probably, I guess, found on eBay or something like this. And what Microsoft has done here apparently is use a relatively similar Power Mac G5 for this PowerPC based Xbox development. And this is booting some Windows NT kernel, which I find pretty amazing, as this Xbox is based on Windows NT kernel, I think. And also the author notes here that it's pretty funny to own a G5 with a huge sticker property of Microsoft Corporation. This is of course really a nice collection piece for sure. And you need some very specific G5 for this. So he writes down here what kind of, I think, 2 original 2003 PowerPC Mac G5 and very specific hardware, including hard drive and ATI graphic card, as well as some special Ethernet card, because I think the onboard, he wrote here, the onboard NIC is not supported, so you need to install a Intel Pro 100 Plus network card. And then you can indeed run here this Microsoft SDK for Xbox 360, which is of course an amazing find and historic piece. I wish more of those things would be preserved. These are really kind of things for museum kind of showcases that, in my opinion, should be more often preserved for the public to see. Also how development works, what kind of things companies clobber together, and also for students obviously, because if you do not see things like this, it is harder to get creative ideas than to get the idea that Apple, that Microsoft just has chosen some competing Apple G5 product for this SDK. And in similar news, I regret a little bit. We were already in 2006, we were Apple developer, registered even Apple developer. And at that time there was this Intel transition, and you could get this Intel transitioning kit for some $1,000 or something. And in the meantime, I regret that we did not get this. I'm often was a little bit of a cheapskate and copy counting on that. But on the other hand, you were supposed to send it back. So I could, even if we would get this, because the Intel transitioning kit was also this G5 Mac Pro looking kind of case here, just with a regular ATX board inside, regular Intel Core to-do or something. And it would not have been a nice piece in a collection. It would also have been a nice thing to retrofit a more high-performance Mac nowadays. Usually I don't say such kind of things on this videos here, not to increase eBay prices, because this is one of the things I have a watch, automated saved search there for that. But the problem is they are rare, and then if they auction for high prices. This is why I usually don't mention stuff like this. On one hand, of course, it is set to take this original Apple Intel board out there, but on the other hand, if you do this, you would have a really original looking Mac, original Apple thing where this ATX mainboard fits in perfectly. But yeah, you obviously can do a Hackintosh easier, just that it would be an interesting thing. The problem is that the regular Mac Pro cases or G5s, of course you can't fit a regular ATX mainboard in there without drilling out holes and mounting points and stuff. So that is why this transitioning kit is so special. Again, you were supposed to send this back. This is also why a second thing, I usually didn't do things like renting it for 2 years or so for $1,000 something. If you have to send it back, that is not something I would waste money on. The only thing is you could probably get away with this is making a pseudo letterbox company get bankrupt with it, and then this thing gets just lost and disappears, or stuff like this. Something I don't usually do with my company, but nonetheless. And this looks here, when you take a look on this SDK stuff, this is how this looks. Xenon launcher and some executables here, some demos and stuff like this. And not sure if you could even run some Xbox games, maybe potentially, I guess. But yeah, pretty neat find, I think. Let's see, they used something similar for the original Xbox, Pentium 3 GeForce 3 and some Intel board. Yeah, really interesting things, and it's really sad that those things do not appear more often. Would be really cool if some official museums have pieces like this, even if Microsoft could. Microsoft and companies like this would donate stuff like this to museums to preserve this development of some things like this. And of course you often find also Apple prototypes on eBay. So if you are interested, sometimes you can even, they are not so expensive. I think most of the Apple prototypes usually have red also, if I recall correctly, mainboards. And this is often one thing that gives it away, and then often there are Apple proprietary stickers on there. So yeah, I found this pretty interesting. Hope you enjoy this kind of finds as well. And in similar PowerPC news, what probably many of you did not know is that even PowerPC was driving around on Mars, and this Opportunity rover that unfortunately contact was lost for, I think, some 6 months or so already, and recently declared a huge success, but mission is over. I think initially it was only supposed to last some 6 or so weeks or something like that, and then it lasted, how many years was it? 6 years or something. And what many probably of you do not know is that those were based on PowerPC 1, very old, either the initial power instruction It's that architecture from the end of the 90s, I guess. And the reason they run this old PowerPC is they are special radiation hardened version of this. So they are specially manufactured in bigger structural sizes intentionally, so that the conducting traces there on the die are larger and not as easily irritated by space radiation. And also additionally they are shielded on top of this, so they have additional shielding layers on the top and bottom and stuff like this, and in between maybe. And also these are plenty expensive. So they were based on Power 1. However, as you can read here from the news, they also have, so they are called RAD, by the way, RAD RAD 6000, and its successor RAD 750, the radiation hardened version of the PowerPC G3. So G3 is the Apple name. Officially they were Motorola Freescale 7500 or 7400 or stuff like this. So G3 was only the Apple nickname for those, or abbreviation. And they also have similar Spark radiation hardened versions, and they still fly around in satellites and stuff like this. So all of those right now still run on power chips, and again additionally very older edition, because they cannot yet at least fly those extreme small structural sizes there to space with radiation would trigger faults, like make transistors switch or not switch by accident by space radiation, and obviously change numbers. And when your number randomly flips from 7 to 7 billion something, then obviously stuff can go wrong. And what is also interesting, let's see here, one of those were links to Wikipedia, maybe something like this or the other. They also have, maybe we try both, so let's open this in one tab and this in another. And you also see the prices. So they have here price estimates for those, and as you would expect, they are plenty expensive. And let's see what they write here. RAD 6000, mainly known onboard computer of numerous NASA spacecraft. And I saw prices mentioned here. Let's see what we find here. Also, by the way, this is how they look here, manufactured by BAE. This is some now ended up at Lockheed Martin. Operating group BAE Systems, Electronics, Intelligence and Support. And maybe it was a price listed here. Let's see. Here, so the RAD 750 system has a price that is comparable to the RAD 6000, which is US dollar 200,000 per board per 2002 reference. And however, customer program requirements and quantities will greatly affect the final unit cost, of course, as usual. And the price of those is no surprise, obviously, as they are not mass manufactured as your regular Intel or AMD gaming rig, obviously, that they manufacture in quantities of millions. Those radiation hardened CPUs are certainly only manufactured in quantities of hundreds, if maybe thousands or so. You know, test samples and stuff like this. Also, if you start your wafer production, you don't just produce 2 or 5, of course, you probably make a run of at least 100 or so, I would guess, or maybe even 1,000. So then you have obviously all your wafer production line with all the lithography and stuff like this running for a week or two, and this certainly costs some millions divided by a quantity of 100 or something, and you arrive at a unit price of 200,000 US dollar per board, plus minus, give or take, obviously. And again, as mentioned here, used in other satellites, spacecraft, space station, you name it. Let's see what was written here in the other one. But obviously you can look this up yourself if this interests you. And also I think the European Space Agency was using Spark a lot of times, and they even have, as far as I remember, some open source versions. So I think there is a synthesizable Spark version as used by maybe at least the European Space Agency, as far as I remember at least. Could also try to Google this while at it. And ESA Spark CPU deviation. Let's see what we get. I think they were named, yeah, right here, Leon 3. Fault-tolerant design against radiation. This is some Spark V8. And let's see what Firefox does with, okay, pretty, I expected some pretty numeric university paper, and all we get is a pretty PowerPoint presentation. So here Alcatel Linea Space company, and same thing here, just with Spark V8. And yeah, fun stuff, 32-bit. Spark V8 is 32, of course, and then with all the radiation hardening and stuff like this, stuff that might be interesting to read up for you. And let's see, Spark in Space, BAE, yes, huge contractor for the US. So what other news have I collected this week for you to share? Yeah, then completely silly stuff, again German website, but that is not the biggest point here. The big point doesn't really matter that it is written here in German. You can ignore this for the most part. USB 3.0, 3.1 will become USB 3.2 Gen X, and this is so ridiculous. I have no words for this. Also something that I work with, because we obviously, for our nearly 500 built-in scanner drivers of ExactScan, no shameless advertisement for ourselves, just random facts here, are most of those USB based. So over the last 20 years I have reverse engineered over 400 scanner protocol stuff from Avision, Fujitsu, Canon, Panasonic, Visionix, Xerox, and a couple of others in between. And so something I unfortunately have to see every other day. And this is so ridiculous. So what's this USB-IF? USB-IF is Implementers Forum, the standard organization where all the USB vendors sit together and discuss the latest developments in the USB standard, where they write all the standard, how stuff should work on the electrical and logical level and stuff like this. And what they have already done, and what was really annoying, is when they introduced USB 3.1 and USB-C, they renamed the stuff. So they previously already renamed USB 3 to USB 3.1 Gen 1 and Gen 2 or some nonsense. And they have done this now, as this was already confusing, and if this was not bad enough, they have done it now again. So what initially some years ago was USB 3.0 is now USB 3.2, which is of course completely ridiculous that the same thing has now 3 names and nobody knows what they talk about. And the only new thing is Gen 2 X2. Everything else is old. So here's a pretty table, and again you probably find this also on English-speaking websites, just that I didn't have time to Google all the stuff where else they have written this. So originally this was USB 3.0, then they also changed it to USB 3.1 Gen 1, because why not? And now they have renamed this again to USB 3.2 Gen 1. This is all the same, nothing has changed, just the name a couple of times. And the same goes for USB 3.1, which originally was USB 3.1, were later known as USB 3.1 Gen 2, and now also known as USB 3.2 Gen 2. And the only difference here is, for the most part, the bump in speed from 5 to 10 gigabits. And what is now new is 3.2 Gen 2 X2, and what they do there is they had there some spare pins. So this 2X2 means that this Gen 2 is used 2 times on 2 additional receive and transmit lanes on this cable that previously were not used for receive transmit. And obviously 2 times the lanes is 2 times the bandwidth. And yeah, then eventually we will later have USB 4, but I'm pretty sure they find some good reason to rename all this nonsense, so it would not surprise me if next year or another year they rename all this stuff to USB 4, Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 2, X2 and USB 4, Gen 2X4 or 4X2 or I don't know what. And I'm pretty sure the reason they have done this is that vendors can, on old silicon, like current gen vendors selling some Apple MacBook, but Apple might not be the most interested in this, but also Razer, Dell, HP, Lenovo, you name it, all of them, if they would not rename this, then vendors would not be able to write that their ThinkPad is supporting USB 3.2, and with this renaming nonsense they've done here, all the vendors, even from 3-year-old silicon, with oldest and slowest Intel integrated something, they can still write it's implementing and supporting USB 3.2, and then in brackets, but probably not even with a small asterisk there, at the bottom of the package Gen 1 and not the latest Gen 2 X2. So yeah, just all this committee stuff that I personally am not the greatest fan of. I have to deal with such kind of discussions, unfortunately, also on a weekly basis as part on the implementers open standard stuff. We are part of an Hexacode, which is Twain, for example, Twain scanning standard and PDFR, and PDF raster that we are currently working on standardizing as a pure raster format of PDF. And I know such kind of discussions very well. I can imagine like I'm on this phone call where they discuss to rename this nonsense for such kind of marketing ideas. So just that you're aware that all this relabeled stuff is not really new and you still get the same stuff in new marketing terms. And in general, of course, what is also a problem with this USB Type-C stuff is that all those USB Type-C can also come with alt mode support for DisplayPort, Thunderbolt and audio. So you can never be sure when you get some USB Type-C device like an ThinkPad or XPS or whatever, you can never be sure what it really supports, because it can be pure USB, it can be Thunderbolt, it can be alt mode, DisplayPort, audio, because what many of you might also not know, many of those USB-C, which I of course don't have here because this is an old iPhone, because I like headphone jack, and what this USB-C, if this would be USB-C, can do is analog audio. I think, however, not the iPhone, only some Android phones. So some of those USB-C phones in the Android world can directly output analog audio on these pins and not digitally. The difference is for you, there are also different dongles, what probably many of you also don't know. There are pure signal wiring passive dongles that only connect the pins to the analog headphone jack, and there are active ones with an integrated circuit which really do USB interfacing of a real active logic USB type audio with a digital to analog converter, and actually probably also an analog to digital converter for the microphone and microphone amplifier. So those dongles for $19 or something, they might or might not include an active IC and analog and digital codec stuff. So pretty complex stuff. And the worst thing of all of this, you can never be sure what you need. The safest thing is always to have this active one, but some Android phones that can output analog directly with this analog and analog digital analog codec integrated in the smartphone already. Of course, this makes this dongle cheaper, because then the dongle can be a $1 or less in production passive, just wiring connection, signal connection dongle. And also the whole thing is, by the way, completely silly, because all the fancy silicon with billions of transistors for all the fancy quad-core processor ARM logic and stuff like this is so complex that the few transistors for the DAC, the digital analog converter, and vice versa, do not add anything in costs. If you have, of course, Apple had before this audio section integrated in their SoC, and they might still have. It costs absolutely nothing in the huge scale of logic gates you have in there to have this audio section. Completely silly in my opinion. And yeah, just that you are aware of this different USB-C stuff. Let's take a look to comments on from the audience. Do you think that it will ever be possible to load, what do you mean with load VFO files on Linux for Octane? Bitmapper, please explain. No idea what you mean with VFO, virtual file, or what? Please explain. So, so these are the USB, irritating USB news. And let's see what, this is also fun news. Let's see in which, this of course are maybe Firefox is opening this in the active window of my multiple Firefox windows. By the way, this is the latest version of Firefox. If you are interested in seeing what effort it is to compile Firefox from source and how many hours it takes these days, even on relatively fancy quad and 8 cores, then you might want to watch my this week's video about Rust and Cargo and Node.js required for compiling Firefox from source. And this is now in the meantime the very latest version of Firefox. And maybe I say another word to this at the end. Let's see, NUF Spark GL is a Spark-based GPS module. It has a Leon 3 and 1 megabyte of SRAM, sort of like an overpowered Arduino. That is interesting to know. Thanks, Chase, for sharing this, and cost 25. That is interesting to know. It's really, in the long term, as you see, I try to do various stuff. We will also continue, as I mentioned in the beginning of this stream, for those who missed the beginning. I also, before I started the live stream, messed with this RME optical ADAT module where I was tinkering on the Linux Alza module. So still the promise kept here to make open source better, financing this kind of work with YouTube ad revenue, which still has not surpassed $3 a day. So still working with few kopecks a day for improving the open source landscape, but this is still the long-term plan. So we will for sure continue with this. And this new format of weekly news gathering is just a new, different, additional bonus material per week we want to do. Christian skip Ardu crap, but the board itself seems fun. Yeah, indeed. And anything else? What was there? The microcode for resolution and timings for impact graphics on Octane R. This you mean? Yes, actually I have some inside knowledge there. And the reason I do not show some of the tinkering of PS3 and Octane is that sometimes some contacts on the internet sometimes give me a tip or two, and I have some additional knowledge that is also why I probably have all, at least for the impact, I think I have all the knowledge needed to do a GL driver theoretically. Just that with the PS3 I realized how much more work this is than I thought it will be. So actually I did not wanted to do all the 3D stuff for the PS3. I only said make the accelerated graphic great again, not greater, because as great as it once was accelerated X, not 3D, but we will continue on this. And the problem is that this is too much work, and so my goal is here really, and I hope it's visible, the efforts I spend here, also not only the investment, spending more money than I earn for hardware, which of course we anyway might or might not need, but more test hardware to have in the office is certainly nice to have. So all this stuff, and of course it's completely normal that we live stream here from a PCIe extended cable hanging in the air setup. So if the stream disappears, then we might have moved the card and shortened the PCB on the case. Completely normal, nothing to worry about. And this is why we will continue with various stuff builds, and we need some reference stuff also for virtualization, various stuff we want to work on and make educational videos and tutorials and stuff like this. And we do all of this to establish a hopefully increasing viewer base here to be able to finance more open source work. And here is the next bug I was working on, because these cards I got from eBay, not only for, among other things, improve here the microphone setup and studio setup, fixing regressions and hypervisor exception, and this stuff is dead and needs a reboot. A little bit annoying until I figure out how to reset this in real life without a reboot. And the same goes for the Octane. And the problem with Octane is we probably have a handful of users worldwide, I guess. Most of the time I have the Octane powered on. I'm likely the only one in the world who has the Octane powered on. By the way, for those playing along at home and are new to this show, we could theoretically also change the view slightly to show our pretty collection of vintage hardware. So these are the Octanes we talk about. They are pretty close here, obviously. And the problem is, how much time do I invest into this when it's only 5 people using those or something like that. But I will continue with this, and maybe someone wanted to find a V Pro to donate, maybe. Also, there was one who had a faster Octane. Of course, I would be even more motivated. I think I already do quite some stuff there with the Octanes, but the faster and greater stuff I have, the more I'm obviously motivated. I would also switch it out. I have a dual core 200 and, not dual core, dual processor 2x200 and 2x250 megahertz. I would change one of those also if someone has a dual 400, which they never power up and only keep in the basement. Happy to switch. There was one subscriber in the audience from the Netherlands or Belgium, or I think it was, maybe it was Belgium. Anyway, Belgium or Netherlands, and who has a dual processor 400 megahertz Octane with an unknown graphic card. And yeah, the faster the stuff is, the more I'm motivated, because the less I have to wait and the faster I can work and the more fun it is, obviously, and stuff like that. And we will continue. And yes, I've seen this mode setting stuff, and I can probably clobber together the stuff for mode setting, just that it's not the extremely very highest priority for the two of us using it. But again, this kind, I will not abandon this kind of content. So even if we hopefully eventually have 10,000, if not 100,000 subscribers, at least this is our goal, we will always come back to this kind of vintage stuff once a quarter or year, or winter or summer, or you name it. So once a quarter SGI, once a quarter HPUX, and once a quarter Ultraspark and stuff like this. Which reminds me, I have not only a ALSA audio regression to hunt on this RME 3288 card, I think also on the Ultra 30 or what I had there, the audio also wasn't working, and I still have the kernel panic on floppy access on at least the Spark Ultra 5. So plenty of stuff to do, just that I prioritize new and fun stuff and not the floppy on an Ultra 5 that probably nobody wants to use anyway. But eventually comes the day that we will fix the floppy on the Ultra 5 and also do SparkStation 2 stuff. And I still have a case to build for the SparkStation IPX, so all the fun stuff to do and improve and continue. Nothing is forgotten, just some new different content each and every week to satisfy all of you and keep you interested and not bored and stuff like this. Let's see that this is in focus, and then see what comments we have in the audience. Here we have, oops, of course now that the stream is running, some more people tune in, obviously. Let's see what we have here. RISC-V, yeah, RISC-V we will for sure also do ASAP. I already prepared RISC-V support in T2, so this stuff is proof of concept compiling, not yet tested on real hardware, obviously. But as soon as I get real hardware, you will be for sure the first to see it live on YouTube. Would be RISC-V has more mindshare and more modern Temlib is an open source Verilog implementation of a Packstation. Oh, interesting, that is good to know. Main drawback of Spark is a windowed register file, which no modern CPU uses, even RISC. Yeah, you could call it a drawback, you could call it a feature. I think Linux was using it quite efficiently. I think David S. Miller once wrote on a mailing list, but this is a decade ago, so some of those quotes might be off, but I think he once wrote on a mailing list that NetBSD is not making efficient use of this. I think on those Sparks, Linux performance was higher due to making complete use of this register file. And the register file was, for those who don't know, by the way, we can also Google this for the general. This was just the wrong browser tab, too many browsers. Spark register window. And you see that this is not the most snappy, and I will comment there to this at the end of this live stream maybe. So in computer engineering register window are features and some instruction set architectures to improve performance of procedure calls. Very common operation register windows were one of the main features of the Berkeley RISC design, which would later be commercialized as the AMD AM2900, Intel i960, Sun Microsystems Spark, and Intel Intenium. And register window, meaning you do not have one set of registers, but you have multiple sets, like you have all your general purpose registers like 32 times or something, and then you do not need to save all of the next window, theoretically improving performance. The only problem is, of course, that eventually you run out of those windows, even if you have plenty of them, like 16 or 32, as soon as you have more than 16, or maybe here's 8, no, here's 8 registers. How many? Criticism: register windows are not the only way to improve register performance, blah blah blah. But I think at least back in the day, for sure they had many performance scenarios where this improved performance. But yeah, maybe the logic gates and processors are better spent for other things. But one thing is for sure, I personally find x86 too complicated and error prone and fragile. It's a little bit of a miracle that Intel and AMD implemented them relatively bug-free, but even this bug-free, you have seen this Spectre meltdown bugs, and maybe others, there always have been erratas for a lot of things. So yeah, so much to x86 bug-freeness. Breakthrough there has been a major breakthrough. Still more people. There's still a lot more people interested in SGI hardware, writes Bitmapper. And yeah, I will for sure continue with this stuff, definitely, as I have now, thanks to these donations. Until last year, when I started this YouTube stuff, I only had one SGI machine, this SGI Octane, that I brought. Then I accidentally got another one where I even thought I pick up an SGI Origin, and then it was an Octane, and which was even in a way cooler than the Origin. But later then I got the next free pickup here on YouTube, an actual Origin 200, which you also have seen on my videos already. So I know I have two relatively close architecture-wise SGI machines, and maybe if someone of you wants to swap a faster Octane, I'm happy to swap for more development on this. The reason MIPS, the audience Chase writes, the reason MIPS does not have a window register file is that the compiler can no better allocate than the hardware can. Yeah, it's actually, I think, in my opinion, not only the allocation, but also in modern systems you often have more than 8 or something active tasks anyway, and as soon as you start swapping the register window out to memory, then the benefit is partially lost anyway. There is, I wonder, there is, Bitmapper writes, in fact, there has been a major breakthrough in emulation. I wonder, did he write, did you write what is a major breakthrough? I don't have a connection to using SGI. I'd still like to own one eventually. I also did not have a real connection, except that I wanted for my Linux T2 Rock Linux work always have to have a handful of different architectures just to get some more knowledge and learn the differences, and also test our scripts that the stuff cross-compiles and even works and stuff like this. You can actually boot into IRIX now. and use it. This might be, you might be referencing Chase writes GenX emule, which I've seen. There's also a new release, and I think the O2 emulation starts to get usable there in GenX emule. We can also open this here while we have already the browser so visible. So this is some open source emulator here on maybe this website or so, and emulates various machines, not only MIPS but also others. And I've read here already some other months for my work that they have improvements to O2. Actually, I mailed with the author regarding SGI Octane emulation. Let's see, interested in, I could borrow you my V12, Alexander Feld, if you're interested in writing drivers for that. Yeah, the problem with borrowing is that I probably need it longer, because right now, as long as I earn currently after Christmas, it's even before Christmas, it was more than $3 a day, and after Christmas it is now less than $3 a day, which is of course a little bit little for all the work it takes to make these videos here. But of course we make this as an not only fun and hobby and your entertainment, but also investment in the future. And our real vision would be that we eventually have such a successful channel that we could even do this here with more than me, and then of course with development kind of open source studio sitting here with more than me, then we could do even more fun. At least it is my long-term vision. I think I mentioned this already slightly in some other videos. And with boring, the problem is that right now, because the V12 or the V Pro, they do OpenGL in a chip and interpret the command stream, you cannot even directly address the memory. And this is why the Linux frame buffer is drawing all the pixels. Each pixel on the screen is drawn with a single GL quad, which of course means that the Linux frame buffer is doing 3D in a way, just with an identity transform, with an zero identity matrix, 1 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 1 stuff, or some more zeros for 4x4 and stuff like this. So identity transform, and then with a perspective transform, drawing all the pixels with GL quads is of course mighty slow, and we need plenty of infrastructure if we want to have X running. We need more than drawing GL quads, so we probably need to set up some DMA texture transfer stuff, and this will take weeks if not months, especially as I need to reverse engineer a lot again, because a lot of this initial reverse engineering is unfortunately lost in those people. Mostly the original author, let's give him some credit. This was Stanislav IP30 MIPS. Let's look up the correct name here for the correct correct attribution. So this is Stanislav Skowronek. So this is only thanks to Stanislav that we have all of this, and unfortunately he does not respond to my emails anymore since already a decade, since he had a job at ATI in the States. And initially I still had contact, but after some years he must have had new jobs or too busy and real life and stuff like this. I don't know. At least I don't have email contact with him anymore, which is really sad. And he did all this, and he had all of those reverse engineering details on his Octane, obviously. And yeah, so let's see what else. Part of MAME, and here are news, not quite the same as being able to use Indigo desktop environment. The nice thing about emulation is that everyone at home can play along, and also that I can do this when I'm traveling and use the time in airplanes and sitting at the beach or whatnot, or conference calls. There's nothing more fun than sitting in some standard committee conference stuff, listening people to rename USB, and you play there with your emulator, because you can do nothing when 20 people fight about the USB naming anyway. So that is obviously time well spent, especially as I can't sit with an Octane in the conference room. So plenty interesting stuff. let's continue with our news segment here. We got a little bit distracted with comments here, and let's see what is going on my smartphone. Some YouTube comments here, so some stuff going on here. So other news, Microsoft has a new HoloLens, and of course usually I'm not the greatest fan of giving Microsoft free advertisement, but this is nonetheless a news development of the week. I have not personally used HoloLens. I think friends of us have a HoloLens, at least they had a HoloLens in their office, just that I'm not hanging often enough out in the office, not sure if they still have it. And what I've seen, however, in other demos that I have seen in videos and stuff, and standing next to it, looked pretty amazing, because the difference is that you see through the environment, and this HoloLens 2 has twice the field of view and eye tracking. And let's see, do they have here some, unfortunately they don't have a screenshot of this. So the big thing is, so each eye has a 2000 by 1500 display, and so right here they don't include an actual field of view measurement in the spec sheet, but Ars Technica writes they come out at around 53 degrees diagonal field of view. And what I find interesting is, of course, I also find other VR headsets interesting, and this was also one thing that I was thinking about, if my company should invest into VR apps, which, however, unfortunately we have not yet done. Maybe I should have done a year or two ago, when this Oculus Rift I found one of the most interesting. But of course, always stuff you need to keep in mind, and I also personally need to keep in mind what we can do as new side projects, investments, future development, and fun stuff like this. And this Microsoft HoloLens is interesting because you can look through this picture, and I think the way this display worked, at least what I've seen in the HoloLens 1 previously, is that I think all of those pixels can be flipped in transparency, so you can make this projection, this projected image, so that you look in your room, and in the corner, on the wall, or on your table, you have stuff blended into your field of view as if they were in your native environment. And this is why I find this pretty noteworthy. For sure, something I should probably eventually give a try. And this is also the biggest difference to other fully world blending gaming headsets, or so I would say gaming, like HTC something, Sony also has one, and the Oculus Rift, because they are probably only usable for games and other second life kind of virtual reality environments, while this Microsoft HoloLens has probably a lot of more use cases for assisted work in the office, or even in the field, on the go, servicing devices out there in the field, and also production lines, you know, this German automakers and others like this, as we have such a big industry of those at the assembly line, blending all this information in assembly steps and other measurement kind of assisted information, and also stuff, as we had initial in the SpaceX news, for astronauts or service technicians on the ground, assembling the rockets and stuff. Certainly plenty of useful workflow possibilities to have this kind of virtual reality assisted stuff going on nowadays. And also, if you are interested in 3D stuff and latest and greatest, like the successor of silicon graphics 3D stuff just nowadays, this artificial reality stuff, certainly something that is potentially very big and maybe a nice fun thing to get into and make money in, I would expect, at least. And then another news we have also here, continuing with a similar theme. By the way, probably I should check what our stream is doing. Yeah, not as many frames as I would wish, but at least not too many drop frames. In other news from our favorite news site, you probably get the idea. Does this not have an X button? But anyway, can be. Anyway, so in this news, Raptor Engineering is helping to improve power support in wine. Hangover. And Raptor Engineering, you might or might not have seen, is a company that is producing today PowerPC workstations, and those have IBM, obviously IBM Silicon, IBM PowerPC, those latest and greatest multi-core modules, Power 9 Blackbird systems, and they are of course interesting. I personally have not got one of those because we have here some dual core G5 that is not, well, it is a decade old or 15 years old or something. It's not the fastest, but it gets its job done, and I'm not that interested in spending thousands of bucks for a Power 9 system when I can have a Ryzen, unfortunately I have to say. But if you are interested in latest and greatest, those Power 9 systems might be of interest. Maybe one of the cheaper alternatives to get a PowerPC system. And what they have done there, they have done work on wine, and this is in similar news. Let's click on this here. On Hangover was probably also this week. Wine developers release Hangover Alpha to run Windows x86-64 programs on 64-bit ARM. And the way they do this, I think, I have not looked this up precisely, but I think to remember that they use QEMU. And how this works is to have parts of this running in Wine, I think, because otherwise you could just run QEMU on a Wine binary with your Windows executable and have QEMU emulate all of this, and of course just in time compile with TCG, with this code generator, tiny code generator, or what does it stand for. And so what this is doing is this improves performance by running, I think, parts of Wine natively and only running QEMU on the original Windows executable. Of course, improving performance when not everything needs to be emulated, because somehow TCG with the JIT compiler of QEMU is somehow not the most highest performance. And I'm also wondering a little bit why, because I think I have seen commercial emulators or commercial just-in-time stuff that was faster than this, I think, at least. So I'm wondering a little bit why this performance was not as high as it could be, because I think there are commercial emulators that are faster, including Windows has a commercial emulation for x86 on ARM for smartphones and tablets, or also this cloud, whatever the term was, this new netbook kind of, whatever the term was in the Windows world, thin and light stuff there with Google, like, what was the term there, Chromebooks or so some Windows something ARM books. And I think the Windows performance was relatively, well, not amazing, but relatively livable. And somehow I think QEMU, although it is just in time translating those binaries, somehow the performance still has a little bit to desire, I think, at least in my recollection. Correct me if I'm wrong. Always feel free to comment and leave in the comments below what is your opinion, and if you think the performance is outstanding or have tips how to run this in a highest performance way possible, just comment below. But yeah, interesting development. So first the ARM and then the PowerPC, people jumped onto it. So interesting development for those of you who might want to run this kind of executables. I personally usually don't have so much interest in this because I usually have open source stuff, so I can usually just compile my stuff. I don't have so many binary programs, so for me this is not the greatest point when I can just recompile my binaries. But maybe if someone has accounting software or some latest and greatest game from a decade ago that he wants to play, this might be something to consider. Let's see, this is worth look for people interesting in power-based open source computers, so PowerPC, notebook, something. Let's open what we got there in the comments below. January PCB campaign, what are we, PowerPC notebook? Oh, notebook, it is interesting. And while we are already at this kind of news, yes, notebook always more interesting, easier to travel with. There, by the way, was a open source ARM open source a couple of years ago, now already older, from someone called, what was his name, Bunny or something. Let's see, some hacker from Hong Kong or so. No, forgot laptop though in the search term. There's also Pine64. I think someone in the audience once mentioned Pine64 book. Let's see, there was also, yeah, Novena. That was what I meant. But this is already older. That is based on some Freescale or so, I think, quad core or so maybe. And this is already many years here, in the meantime 4 years ago. And in retrospect also some nice thing I could have got. The reason I did not get this, because back in the day I thought the performance is not the most outstanding. And back in the day, even when this was new, because this was some Freescale, maybe even 32-bit Freescale IMX6. So A9, whatever, A9 was, maybe they intentionally have not written 32-bit. I would expect probably this was 32-bit. Correct me if I'm wrong. And maybe the GPU was also, not sure what the GPU was, something maybe not open source, maybe PowerVR or I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, something like that. But it would have been an interesting board, one of those things I should probably have got. Had I had a YouTube channel 4 years ago, I would have got this for sure, but one of the next things we will get here. So next is RISC-V, also probably noteworthy how much this project grossed. Of course, nice to see that they raised here $783,000 US for this of the $250,000 US goal. But you should not forget that those people usually do not get very rich with this, because they also had to develop all of this. So the development cost quite some time and money. Also all the hardware manufacturing, all the hardware production and stuff like this, PCB layouting, testing, production, maybe a second and third spin, and then also the final assembly. And also with this money raised, they also had to manufacture more units. So, and yeah, if you are in PCB manufacturing, you probably know the economics of this, and PCB manufacturing and all the SMD part placement and soldering and stuff like this is not for free. And with this, it is time to probably get back to the last news for this week. And of course there is always more news, but we can't cover here more news in, actually, did we really stream to 3 hours ago already? If we streamed 3 hours, but actually maybe the time is wrong again. Anyway, let's check here with OBS. Actually, yeah, 1 hour, so the time is off here for some server board, damn it. Anyway, so another blog post I scrolled over is we need Chrome no more. And you can read this if you want and get the URL or Google this in Google the title if it is not readable enough. You will for sure find it. Maybe in the future we will always compile the links for the leave it in the comments below. And he makes a point that nowadays everyone is using Chrome in this mono culture, and this is also someone many videos ago asked me in the audience if I heard that Microsoft is switching Edge to Chrome, and I commented my opinion a week or two ago that I find this really stupid, because in my opinion technology leading companies like Microsoft need their own browser engine, because otherwise they just become packagers of others people's stuff, and they are dependent. Of course they can always tweak and tinker on this, but it's always something else if you reuse someone else's browser, HTML, JavaScript CSS engine, or if you have your own, because then you share the same bugs and performance metrics. Of course, you can always tweak this a little bit, but there's only so much you can tweak. Also, you want upstream changes, and if you're gonna merge upstream changes back into your code base, then you don't want to change it as much anyway. And I agree to some of his comments here. You want to read this. Of course, this is a funny development. Previously, Microsoft has slowed down the development of the web, and now Google is a little bit slowing down the development of the web when everyone only depends on the development of Chrome. And this is also why Google, of course, they had their mantra, don't be evil, and I think in the meantime Google has also proven at a number of occasions that they're also a little bit evil in the meantime. I think they even scratched their don't be evil mantra in the meantime officially, or so at least I heard. And one problem I have with this, and this is also why I never have actually used Chrome much, not even on Mac. I usually use Safari there. It was good enough for me also not to support this one browser monoculture. And on Linux, on our T2 Linux, I stayed with Firefox also because Firefox compilation is already cryptic and time consuming and head scratching enough. And I'm not really in the mood to have a second as complex package to set up and compile and stuff. And this is why I kept mostly with Firefox. But as you've seen with my videos about Firefox, Rust, and Node.js and Cargo, that compiling Firefox with this Rust modules there, because nowadays they use Rust in their rendering engine for improved performance and security, at least they say. And this is why I still stick to this, not to contribute to this monoculture of the one web is depending on one set of security vulnerabilities and performance metrics, and all the Chrome WebKit private API non-standard prefix stuff. And yeah, maybe an interesting read and something to think about. I've at least tried my part not to contribute to this market share leader thing in this regard. And one problem, I teased this already in the beginning of the video, that my problem here with Firefox and the web as it is that this scrolling is relatively okay-ish, you see here, but I have a real problem with the development of the web, that everything really becomes slowish. And of course, I'm right now loading here the CPU already, something my brand new low-end entry-level AMD Radeon is already struggling here a little bit for unknown reasons, because when I test streamed this I had a higher frames per second, maybe as I in the meantime close the SpaceX rocket launch video right now, we still have a not as high frame FPS here. And the only reason I can see is because we now drive two outputs, because when I previously test streamed my FPS were a solid 30 frames. So I wonder if the FPS here is lower because I'm driving two displays right now. But whatever, the actual web performance here is not that much different than when I'm browsing here without hardware encoding. And my problem is really that everything you see here is a little bit slowish loading here, and we have a 400 Mbit cable line, and for a 400 you see everything. Well, this is of course a video, but all the navigation always feels, even when I'm live streaming, not the most snappy. You see this is loading here for some good 4 seconds or so. I would really think from some 16 threaded 8-core dedicated GPU stuff, this sites would load more snappy. And when you then load, the German people in the audience will know Fefe's blog here. And here is today's anecdote: infrastructure apocalypse. Our German telecom internet outage here in Berlin, thanks God not our part, but we're not at T-Online anyway. So, and he writes here, nice greetings from the GSM emergency compatible internet site, or like the nearly only GSM capable internet website on the internet, because his site here is so static, kind of static at least, old school tech, that obviously it loads instantly. And also, shameless plug, our own websites here, and this is not local, this comes from a data center, and this obviously loads here very fast. And the reason for this is, shameless plug, we don't use all this JavaScript and whatnot frameworks, and this is why I wanted to mention this. Even you see, even the YouTube section here loads relatively snappy, and when you compare this to loading the YouTube dashboard, then this will take quite some seconds. Of course, right now this is relatively good performing, more or less, at least anyway, but again, this is a 8-core 16-thread 32 gig dedicated AMD, not the state of the art, but RX 560, although it's video encoding, and on a Microsoft Surface the whole website browsing stuff becomes an even more laggy affair. And then try to do this with a Chromebook of yesteryear. The point I wanted to make is, we really need to change how we develop websites. When you take a look, of course, our websites are intentionally low-tech for many maintainability reasons and stuff like this. And also, obviously, our T2 Linux site, shameless plug, they are, for example, these sites here are completely static. And they obviously, well, not that there would be that much information, but at least the information we need there is relatively static. Actually, there are some dynamic elements. This package index is dynamic, listing our, I don't know, 2000 packages, but even this 2000 packages stuff scroll relatively okay-ish. And this is generated, even this site is generated in 0.3 seconds. Shameless plug there. And yeah, even this huge site, and then when you click on stuff, of course, this sites load relatively fastish. And the point I wanted to make is that, unfortunately, even on such high-end machines, I don't feel like this Firefox stuff is the most snappy. And yeah, you see the advertisements there loaded in some 3 or 4 seconds on our 400 Mbit internet cable connection here. So yeah, somehow all the advancements in CPU performance are eaten away by all the Node.js and 30 frameworks. And when you take inspect element look here and look on all this, wherever that was, performance data, and there is even tree map, there is even storage and all this stuff they are loading here, Pro Market, Criteo, whatever, trackers and whatnot, and local storage, and you name it. You usually find plenty of stuff, while these sites are a little bit not snappy. So yeah, somehow, in my opinion, we really should rethink how we develop web and regular applications, because I have the feeling everyone nowadays just slaps every framework they find together, and then apps and websites are based on 20 frameworks that fight with each other and take 4 seconds to load, even on a 400 Mbit connection, you name it. And yeah, I'm not really sure if this is Firefox's fault, because when I take a look on how huge this HTML stuff is, then I usually feel sorry for browsers who have to parse and render all this stuff, because yeah, modern websites, you get the idea. And with this, I have, unfortunately to say, I run out of time, but we probably live streamed long enough for this week's Bits. What was the title even? This week's Bits Tonight show. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. I hope even if you watch this archived DVR on demand recording here, you enjoy it. As usual, leave in the comments below what you liked and disliked, what I quoted wrong, or you have another opinion. We usually read all the comments and share, like and subscribe ourselves. Let's see what final remarks we have in the audience. And as usual, I hope you find this format useful. I for the time being will continue to collect news of the newsworthy bits news of the week and try to live stream them during the weekend. So if you want to make time for this and watch this live together with us, that is something you could look forward to. And if you have an opinion for the most optimal time to live stream this, just leave it in the comments below. Not yet sure what is the very best time for this. Always, I could have live streamed this in the morning, but I guess the morning would have not been good for most of you. So looking forward to hear your comments of the most ideal time to live stream this. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, night, morning, afternoon, you name it, best in UTC encoding. So I have an idea if you just write Friday evening. I don't know where you are, so please leave this, if you comment on this, please leave this with a local time zone encoding, so, or UTC, so I can make a clue what time that is for me. Then Chase writes here, Firefox typical isn't isolated on Linux, although support will about support will tell you what installation is anything is being used. I think there are some demos on Vulkan installation, web render Firefox on Linux, and you can unlock a few extra shader cores on RX 460. Not sure how much it helps, though we are talking about 10% gain. If you have, Christian, if you have details how to unlock this, always great to see comments about this. By the way, one funny thing, someone mentioned that it's possible to unlock the 8th SPU on the PS3. I will probably try this another day. I hope I don't break my PS3 with this. I hope actually I have two, but my slim PS3 at home is a SKU 3000 one or something. So the 3000 SKUs are not other OS custom firmwareable right now. So I probably have to try this SPU unlocking or SPE unlocking on my fat PS3 here in the office. Hope I don't brick it, but would be interesting to see if we can get an 8th SPE there. And evening, Chase writes evening or weekends, just EST 15 time zone. It's a video BIOS mod. I have done it on RX 460. What exactly are we having here? Let me get the... So we got here 560, so 560 here. And yeah, if you have some unloxing for 560, I have this 14 the newer SKU, the annoying AMD fake SKU thing with only 14, I think, instead of 16 compute units. This annoying thing that I specifically pointed out on the initial 14 compute units. If you have unlocking tips for this, let me know. The next live streams might be from the Mac Mini again, because I have most likely will use this Ryzen build for non-GPU stuff in our server rack. But anyway, we will keep this and for tinkering, and we will likely build as soon as the Zen 2 silicon from AMD hits the internet and the real world. We will likely build a new AMD Zen 2 Zen or Threadripper or Epic, something like this. And also the Mac Mini was actually not that bad performing this Intel silicon, because somehow right now I'm slightly disappointed. I think with two screens for some reason the old Intel silicon there was performing better. I really wonder if we will find out another live stream if this OBS performance is limited by the second screen, because until I enabled this the performance was better. Do I even have a... Here I have a root shell. Let's see, I found here a proc file, but although we probably could have done this. Yeah, busy percent is, what is it? So the busy percent is 2 or what of this? Ah no, 62. 11, what? Why is this fluctuating so much? So much to... Wait, why is it no? Somehow this busy percent so much too. I wanted to try this, not tried this. I only tried this with Vulkan demos before, and then it was anything between 20 and 60, 80, 90%. So whatever this busy percent things are 100, so 100 busy just encoding video, whatever. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this and learned something. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe. As always, leave all your comments, suggestions and tips in the comments below. And with this, I hope to see you soon for the next videos to come. I probably will post something tomorrow, and as I said initially in the beginning of this year, my plan was a video constantly every second day. This was slightly disturbed with me starting live streaming, and then with a live stream every day testing stuff, then it became a live stream a day, which was not our initial goal. And this is where we currently are, live streaming every other day with a video in between. I still need to go and meditate, do some guru meditation and find out what is the best schedule for me, because that is unfortunately one of the most important things, that it is the best schedule for me. Sorry for you guys, but that's what it is, as long as we only make $3 a day with this. And then eventually, if this hopefully eventually becomes bigger business, then we can reschedule for what is better for the audience. But that said, we will most likely right now have a video or live stream every day, because I will probably be tempted to live stream some random nonsense every day just for testing our equipment, or burning our silicon here. With actually the only good thing is that this stays cool. Yeah, this is actually cool. Let's see what the sensors stuff is printing out. This is 47 degrees at the silicon core, I guess, which 17 watts, not too bad. And with this being said, there will be probably a video tomorrow, either editing stuff I have from old recordings the last weeks, or live streaming some coding, which by the way might also be live coding this other stuff here for this optical 8-channel optical ADAT, optical here light pipe, ADAT light pipe, but all the next videos and live stream to come.